Hello.
I'm Summer.
I'm Janice.
I'm Dee.
I'm Kevin.
And this is
It's
Written Together.
Every season, we work collaboratively to tell a different story.
Each episode of the season, one of us extends the story from where the last person left off.
The rest of us don't know what's in store, so it's an adventure for everyone.
Thanks, Siri.
I'm saying yes a lot, and I hit my watch, and it's like...
So join us for fun,
For mystery,
Creativity, but most of all,
to be delighted by stories
Written
written
together.
together.
does anybody else want to start the show? Don't all crowd me at once. Oh my God. Oh, the concussive noise of everyone vying for attention. Oh.
Me.
All right. Howdy do, campers. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Written Together.
I like that. That was very dun dun dun.
How's everybody doing? How you doing, Dee and Janice and Summer?
Just
Oh.
dandy.
Just Dan.
Delightful. I love it. I love how we get that at least once an episode. That just makes it all come together.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to have this short of a name, which is like no personality to it, you've got to spice it up a bit.
Oh.
It's just like the fourth letter of the alphabet. I mean, really?
It's D with an E, though. You know, Ann with an E is better. You're D with an E and another
two.
E.
Two, yeah.
We are very excited because we have the fabulous opportunity to hear the entire novel that has been written.
Oh my gosh. All right. So listeners, happy campers, let's give you a little backstory. So you, dear listeners, are blissfully unaware of the length of time that has passed between our previous recording and this one. Now, due to no fault to anyone, it was just we had some COVID attacks, and then
Summer
some
had COVID, then
hurricane
Summer
attacks.
didn't have COVID. Summer had strep, then Dee had COVID.
And
Yeah.
then there was
And
a
then the
hurricane,
hurricane.
in Florida.
Yeah. So we've had a bunch of crappy
Confluence of
stuff land in
events.
our laps. So yeah, this is the first time we're getting back together in quite some time. Oh, right. And and because we kept pausing for so long, my story kind of increased in size.
Much like a lot of Kevin's things.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Woo! Ew.
Oh.
We mentioned very early on, not safe for work.
That's true. That's true. We sure
If
did.
you were
I'll let your children
Out
listen to
loud, that is at your own peril.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, we at our first delay, I said something about my story increased by 1 page, and this is all your fault. You have only yourself to blame. And then when it got pushed a second time, there were jokes about how much more I was going to write. And then when it got pushed the third time, it was like, oh well, we have to get ready for Kevin's novel.
Yeah, we're ready. We are ready to hear all of the lovely things.
Ugh, yeah,
We still have to
sure.
do your interview too. Don't think you're getting out of that. I love how you're
I'm not.
trying to pretend that that's not going to happen.
So we'll have a.
He's like, I'm sorry, your mic cut out for a second.
Yeah,
I
I'm not
can't
sure what. Yeah, I mean,
Where did Janice go?
yeah. Where did Janice go? Oh.
Suddenly, I'm no longer part of the meeting. Wait, what?
Activate Robo Janice. So,
Sounds a lot like Summer, Robot Summer.
You know. Oh, it's great.
So we'll go ahead and we'll have our recap here. Story recap. What's happened so far?
Gluttony just can't get enough of whatever she's doing, and Pride can't get enough of herself. Wrath's eyes were a pure fire as she turned to Lust. Well, find them.
She felt she controlled a good number of the ghostly roommates. Gluttony more so than Pride.
Pride must have gotten to him while he was sleeping. Motherfucker.
All we've done is made things feel a little sluggish for them, that's all. Look, anything more invasive, and you're risking them realizing someone is mucking around with their mojo, and then they will get all riled up.
Not to mention Pride feeling like she was entitled to be the leader. Fake ass bitch.
All right, well, that was a great recap. Well done, everyone. You all do recaps so very well. I mean, better than any other people I've worked with. I mean, props to you. Hats off.
Lovely. Man, we really need to start putting this on YouTube if we're going to be doing action sequences when nobody can see. That's fantastic.
Actions.
So just remind us a little bit, Kevin, what your deadly sin is. Like what had been chosen.
Ah, yes. The wheels of randomness picked for me the sin of pride. And
Awesome.
so pride, and I named this segment Superiority Complex.
That's wonderful already.
So we just get into it then? Or do you want to? I mean, we can keep chit-chatting. I'm fine with just chit-chatting.
No, Evan.
No, I'm so ready for this.
We have been ready for like
go.
a while. We're ready.
Okay. Stretch. Okay.
Marathon reading session about to commence.
Just start jogging in place.
Okay.
Dead.
And I'm so glad you did that. I didn't want to say anything, but
All right. Superiority complex. Pride stood alone amongst forgotten boxes in the den. Looking out through a window to the backyard, she watched Envy with the human. She found the scene wildly amusing. The man yelling into his phone, Envy buzzing around him, drinking in his resentment-laced spite. Pride shook her head and chuckled at her little sister's machinations. This den was Pride's favorite room. Regardless of who occupied the house at any given time, the awkward positioning of this room at the back of the house meant it seemed to almost always be largely ignored. In fact, she was standing in almost this exact spot the last time she saw a human wandering the backyard. She watched then as that little magician boy attempted his incantations in her yard, and she took great joy in playing with his mind. She deprived him of any sense of accomplishment for those first few attempts of his, causing him to trip over his insecurities, overthinking, growing self-doubt, only to let all that pent-up self-satisfaction crash over him like a wave that last time she saw him there. She had enjoyed it at the time, but then what happened with Wrath earlier today actually took Pride by surprise. And while she did enjoy Wrath's characteristically unhinged reaction and display of an inherent lack of leadership,
What in the holy fuck is happening?
Pride does not like being surprised. Thinking back to that boy, she must have been so distracted relishing in his boosted sense of self-importance that she completely missed that he, somehow, had actually done it right that time. She hadn't mentioned it to the others, of course. There's power in knowledge, after all. And if Wrath was distracting the family with an occult scavenger hunt, she might as well take advantage of it to think. So while Envy played with the man, and Lust poked around in the basement, and the others were off wherever they were, Pride rested here, in her den, contemplating her next move, navigating the branches of possible outcomes for every action and reaction. After all, as far as she was concerned, there was no problem to solve with the human. Wrath made everything about her. A problem for Wrath was a problem for the family. And sure, Pride understood this man's depression had impeded most of the family, but not her. Pride was the oldest of the siblings, and that came with some big-picture understandings lost on the others. She had a better grasp of the human psyche and knew how to twist nearly anything into a darkly warped sense of honor. Take this sad, lonely, depressed, disheveled, unwanted, unloved, tossed to the side and forgotten man, for example. When he first showed up on their doorstep, his deeply dark self-loathing enveloped him like a cocoon, protecting him from most of the others. His zeal for life buried far too deep to be coaxed by lust. His perception of anything or anyone else too eclipsed by the void in his chest to be tainted by envy, or even manipulated by greed. His pain too all-encompassing and raw to be leveraged by wrath. His mind too numb and fuzzy to be penetrated by gluttony. But pride? Come now. It was such a long and loving relationship. The marriage, such a deeply important part of your life. This grief is a testament to how much that relationship meant to you. This depression, as terribly as it hurts, is meaningful because of that hurt. If you bounced back too quickly, was the relationship even real for you? Did you even care about Esteban? You're not the kind of man who views romantic partners as mere accessories. People are not disposable. You have more dignity than that, more self-respect. This time in the dark, enveloped by grief, comforted by pain, is a badge of honor. It shows everyone how seriously you took the relationship, the separation, the divorce. It proves to the world Esteban was no fling. It proves how decent of a person you really are. Pride closed her eyes and took a deep breath, drinking in the subtleness of her work over the last few months. The man had been quite depressed, and while it was very real, there were absolutely a few corrupted flames of pride in that dark fire. Of course, Pride took no issue with Wrath's plan to fix the man either. Well, not in theory, anyway. Pride came out ahead on either side of that equation, so it didn't really matter to her. And since Sloth managed to give the man the psychological distance he needed to take those first healing steps, the rest of the family had started finding their own. Sorry, could you say?
Sorry. I was going,
Thanks,
yes.
Siri.
I was saying yes, Sloth, and I hit my watch, and it's like...
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Well, that's great.
Apparently my watch is all in on this story. He needed to repeat that line.
Apparently, yeah. And since Sloth managed to give the man that psychological distance he needed to take those first healing steps, the rest of the family has started finding their own ways to help him. Envy managed to begin weaving a tapestry of want around his heart, which, in turn, gave Lust the structure she needed to stoke the embers of his desire for life back. Pride shrugged. It was decided, she supposed. The wards should come down now if they were to finish their work on the man together, as a family. Pride sighed deeply. I guess it's time to be a little more proactive at this point if we're to make more than tiny, incremental progress. She gently floated into the living room where Wrath was still fuming. Wrath, my dear, I think... Wrath spun around, eyes still filled with rage at the embarrassment she had so publicly suffered earlier, cutting Pride off. What? Before Wrath finished enunciating the tea, Pride had closed the distance between them in a whoosh strong enough to make the man's litter in the room blow back and spin around. Now mere centimeters from her sister's face, Pride calmly whispered, I'll just wait right here until you've settled yourself enough to not take that tone with me. Wrath stood motionless, locking eyes with Pride for a moment, before her left eye twitched and she looked away. Her posture softened and she took a step backward. Apologies, Pride. I'm sure you can appreciate my frustration. Wrath started pacing, not entirely sure where to direct her anger at the moment. Pride's posture did not change. Her eyes simply followed Wrath as she started her pacing. Well, to that point, I believe I have discovered an answer. Wrath stopped pacing and turned to face Pride. There was a glint in her eye that made Pride smile. Well, spit it out. Pride made small gestures with her hands to the corners of the house as she spoke. Wisps of chthonic miasma appear to be emanating from the outside corners of the house. They do seem to be getting weaker over time, however, so their threat is limited, but I would need to study them further to figure out exactly how long their natural degradation would take without outside interference disrupting them. Wrath slowly turned to face Pride. As soon as she did, Pride realized her mistake. Getting weaker over time, you say? Exactly how long have you known about this to be able to deduce the relative strength degradation, Pride? Pride smiled, despite Wrath's mocking. Deciding there was no point in lying, she maintained eye contact and responded. I saw the little magician boy who placed the wards. He sent them up shortly before our human took up occupancy with us here. Pride greatly enjoyed the next few seconds. She watched as Wrath processed that information and cycled between becoming enraged, trying to control herself, starting to lose control, attempting to speak, then stopping, going to move in one direction, then turning back again. This went on for only 2 or 3 seconds, but to Pride, it was a glorious eternity of moments she relished. Wrath, finally losing herself to herself, raised her face to the heavens and let out a deep, guttural roar. Ripples of lilac and violet fire cascaded over her body and blasted out through the room strongly enough to make Pride's hair blow back. Pride casually looked from side to side, smiling to herself as she took note of how nothing in the physical realm reacted to Wrath's outburst. Wrath, you can be mad at me about this later. Right now, we need to get the man outside of the house and influence him to disrupt those wards. Do you feel he's vulnerable enough yet? Pride already knew the answer to that, of course, but she also knew it was in everyone's best interest for Wrath to feel useful. Wrath took several deep breaths before she responded. Sister? Wrath shook her head and...
I'm sorry, all I can hear is what we do in the shadows.
Oh.
See, I thought it was more like Bette Midler.
That's right, yeah.
Sorry.
Midler's grabs the gun, yeah.
Oh, no, IT crowd, the guy, Father!
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Act 2. Yes. Perfect. Anyway, go ahead.
Wrath shook her head and cracked a smile as the last of the small flames rolled down her body and extinguished. Oh, that's quite possibly the deepest, most soul-wrenching release I've had in a long time. Now, you were wrong to hide this from me, but I absolutely would have done the same thing. She laughed good-naturedly. Well, I'm sure you would have tried, Pride thought to herself, as she returned Wrath's smile. Wrath smoothed her hair down with one taloned hand and continued, now more in control of herself. But to answer your question... Wrath paused. Both she and Pride turned to see Raoul slowly entering the room. He moved past Pride unknowingly and flopped himself onto the couch. Pride's eyes narrowed as Sloth's form began to take shape, enveloping the poor human. Wrath chuckled and continued. Let me see. Wrath closed her eyes and centered herself. She placed one finger of her left hand delicately on her left temple and held out her right fingers in an arcane gesture. She reached out with her mind to navigate the complex web of the man's subconscious within the fabric of the house and their collective influences. Pride rolled her eyes. Yes, Wrath opened her eyes, dropping her hands to her side, and smiled. Enough of him has rekindled for us to start having more influence on him. Pride gave a short nod, matching her sister's smile. Excellent. It's about time he starts taking some pride in his yard, don't you think, sister? Wrath chuckled. Indeed I do, dear sister. Indeed I do. Pride smiled, turned, and gently floated out of the room. Wrath's smile fading to a twisted grimace of disdain as soon as Pride turned her back was a given. But, as with most things Wrath did, Pride didn't give it more than a passing thought. The next morning, Raoul was up bright and early. A gnawing had started at the back of his mind the afternoon before, and he couldn't quite shake it. He suddenly realized how horribly disheveled the backyard was. When he walked around to the front, looking up and down the block at the other houses only made him even more horrified at his yard. How did I let this go for so long? He muttered softly. An hour later, clothes all grass-stained and skin covered with dirt and thorn scrapes, he was on the phone. Hey, Jan, so, are you still running that all-queer landscaping crew? Pride stood at the side and shook her head amusingly. The desire mixed with desperation in his voice made her chuckle.
Yes.
Yay!
Oh man, what a setup.
I love that it ends up being Wrath and Pride who seem to have this face off, because I feel like of all of the 7 deadly sins, those two would be the ones who would sort of be at each other the whole time.
Yeah.
Are you angry or are you proud? Are you angry or are you proud? Are you proud because you're angry? Are you angry because you're proud? Like, those are such strong emotions that they would always kind of be neck and neck for who gets to be kind of the leader.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
so-
you know, I'm just playing off what you all laid down, so thank you.
that was
Oh my goodness.
so good. There was so much. There was so much. Yeah, you really intertwined so much for the rest of the stories to kind of get us to this space. And Pride she does not care. She's like, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
She does not care.
First of all, watch your mouth, you know? And
Yeah.
Wrath is like, fine, you're the only one that can do that.
Watch your mouth.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it was all right.
It's
Oh my
great.
God, it was amazing.
I'm like thinking through all the sequences. There was so much covered. It just worked so well.
Thanks.
The yard is a nice sort of metaphor for, like, you know, clean up your space before you worry about others. So he's like finally taking care of his shit.
Yeah.
And that whole thing with Pride influencing him to be like, you know, your relationship mattered to you. You know, of course you were going to feel these things. Like, it's almost like Pride was validating everything that Raoul was going through. And
Which Pride does.
yeah, which it is very important in the healing process, whether we want to accept that or not.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
justify, you validate, you make excuses to save face and feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
Make it so you make it, you know?
Yeah, I remember a previous long-term relationship that I ended, and it was like I felt incredibly guilty. I mean, not guilty. I mean, you know, it's very complicated, right? I
Yeah.
felt guilty that I caused pain. You know, that's
Yes.
what I felt guilty about.
Yeah.
And so there was a long period of time whenever anything bad happened to me that caused me pain, I felt it was deserved because of
Yes.
the pain I
It
caused.
was in
that I
direct
caused him.
correlation to having caused that pain. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that.
So there
I
was
understand that.
definitely this kind of self-righteous, prideful,
Yeah,
prideful self-rationalization
yeah,
of like, okay, well, I'm a good person. That's why I'm feeling. I mean, not that those thoughts consciously went through my head, but as I analyze those feelings now, like looking back, it
Yeah.
definitely was prideful, and that's kind of where I drew on for some of this. You know, like
yeah. But you
there-
have to go through that pride part to heal yourself, and then once you're healed, you can look back and say, okay, I was being very prideful in this moment. Like, okay,
yeah.
I was getting myself to the place where I could heal myself.
Yeah.
Because once you're past that, then you can really look back and say, no, there were parts of it that I was wrong, and be okay with it. You know, just be like, okay, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You
I
also,
can feel that. No,
They
go
also
for
did
it.
a really good job not making pride bleed into vanity, which I think is a really easy thing to
Yes.
do.
Yeah,
Like
agreed.
I went from feeling proud of myself and my actions and proud of who I am into I am great. You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
thanks.
that felt really good. She has a feel all her own, and you didn't delve too deeply into her past or anything like that. It was just, this is who Pride is and shall always be. Like it is what it is in the moment. And that is so much of the character of Pride, because it is living in that moment that makes it feel that way. That Pride is at its strongest.
Hmm.
And so it just felt like it was a characterization, but not a characterization. So you weren't like delving too hard into it, which made it perfect.
Oh, that's funny that you said that, because right before everybody else joined, I was talking with Dee and about, I mentioned the talk that you and I had, Janice, about things being
Yeah.
more character study and less story driven. And I was complaining to Dee that I felt like I had fallen into that trap, that I had just made another character study about Pride. And then I got to the end and I'm like, oh shit, I did all the things I wanted to do with the character. And now I completely forgot to like do a thing with the story.
Which is so funny, because I feel like, again, that was the least characterization that we've had for each of the sins. But
Hmm.
you could feel her character so well, like bleeding through and emanating through the storyline that she was going through. We didn't have to know anything about her past to understand that this is who Pride is. And so it made complete sense, and it just forwarded the story. And adding the idea of months was great, because anytime you start accelerating timelines, there's so much in between that people will just assume,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is always great in a story. Because if you go every day or week to week, it's a lot. But if you're actually accelerating through, where we don't have to hear everything that he is like working through, just the epiphanies that he's having,
Mhm.
that's the important hooks of the story that make it really enticing to hear the next part. So it's fantastic.
Cool. Thanks.
It's
All right.
beautifully done. And
I
the
have a
verbiage, come
Yeah.
on.
And
I
the
have a
what?
technical, practical question. There's only one sin left, right?
Gluttony.
Do we just default to gluttony, or do we still spin and maybe get a second story?
So we had decided that we wanted to make sure that all of them had a story first before we start allowing reprises. So we'll still spin it, because there are two other things on there.
Oh,
There's
right.
Writer's
There's
Choice
Raoul
and
and-
Raoul.
yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
we'll spin. If it lands on one that we've already done, then we'll just do Gluttony. How about that?
Okay.
Sound okay?
That sounds good.
That sounds good.
Great.
All right. Time to spin the wheels of randomness. Boop. And boop. Ha! Gluttony.
Get out.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And
Well, at least we don't have to worry about that.
D.
Oh, don't make it the fat girl. God damn it. All right.
Oh my gosh.
You're a
Stop it.
Excuse me.
We need to stop that right now.
Wow.
Do not
Damn it.
even.
Do you want to
Woman.
do
All
you
right.
want to abstain? Do you want me to spin again?
No, I'll do it.
Okay.
No, you can't say no. You got to do it.
Yeah. Please.
It's the year of yes.
No.
Cool. All right. So next time we will have D and Gluttony.
I'm excited.
Glutton D? No.
Yeah.
Gluttony.
See?
D?
See?
No.
Mm-mm.
No. Ooh, we're gonna have to think out the box this time. Oh my
Yeah.
We can't
Oh my
default.
Oh, no.
Exactly. There'll be a lot of the word delicious is probably
Oh,
going to
Oh, wonderful.
I love the
Delightful.
idea of gluttony is such a cool concept, because it can mean so
many things.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's like when we talked about lust.
Lust.
It's like
Exactly.
lust can mean so many different things. We default to one particular thing. But but so many. I'm excited because, you always
Me
have
too.
fresh eyes on stuff, and I love it.
We shall see.
Great. All right. So then, do we have any housekeeping to take care of before we
Well,
break?
we need to figure out your interview.
Yes.
You can't ignore all three of us.
So nothing then? Okay.
Yeah, Kevin.
Well, that's fine. Yeah. So why don't I thought that
you sound like someone who was trying to ask someone out on a first date.
Janice,
Yeah, so,
the haircut looks
yeah,
great.
but what?
Your hair looks great.
Feet shuffle, feet shuffle, feet shuffle.
All right. Cool. Great. Well, thanks everybody. This has been fun. With that, I guess we declare the match extinguished. All right. All right. Bye, everybody. You have a great time. And we'll see you next time. And I'll say time
Bye,
again.
everybody.
Bye.
Background music and sound effects courtesy of Zapsplat. Check him out at zapsplat.com. If you'd like to know more about Written Together and the stories we've told, visit us at writtentogether.com.